Paradigm of love and universal consciousness with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix. I'm your host, Jenna Care Lessin. My co-host is Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Debra DeFranco, and you're listening to Revolution Radio, Studio B. Our guest today is Terry Lovelace, and this is part 2. We had Terry on a couple weeks ago, and we just enjoyed him so much, and we didn't get to finish his stories, so we invited him back for part 2. So, Sasha, would you like to say anything before we...
Well, just talking funny because we were left at a cliffhanger and I've been holding my breath. What cliff are we hanging from, Jerry?
Oh, you silly boy. Okay. Yes, so we left at a cliffhanger, but I don't remember what it was. Terry, where were we? You were dangling off the edge of the cliff and your...
And I was on by one hand. Yeah. I don't remember. I'll tell you what I did remember to do, though, is while we were talking and wrapping things up, I made a list of things that I thought were important to cover that I didn't. And I'd really like to get to those tonight because I think it's stuff people would like to hear.
Follow your lead. You're going to take us on a journey. You're a wonderful storyteller, and I love your, your punctuation, your cadence, your language, everything you use. It's just like sitting around a campfire, listening to Terry Lovelace. So
nice.
Take it away, and we will interrupt you now and again with some poignant questions.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Just a real quick introduction in case you missed last time. My name is Terry Lovelace. I'm the author of Incident at Devil's Den. It's the story of my 1977 abduction from an Arkansas state park. Actually, it was with a friend, a co-worker. We were both taken that night. I enlisted in the United States Air Force in 1973, right after high school, and spent 10 years on active duty. I was stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base, which is kind of east of Kansas City. It was the middle of nowhere back in the 70s. It's fairly well populated now. And Whiteman is was a SAC base. It's now home to the B-2 bombers, but back then when I was there, they had the B-52s and the Minutemen II ICBM missiles spread out all over the countryside. So, I was there from 1973 to 1979. Got out of the military, finished my undergraduate degree in psychology, went to law school at Western Michigan, passed the bar, practiced law, made the law my career, which is really the only thing that held me back from telling the story, 40 years ago, is that I would have lost my job. I certainly would have lost the respect of my peers in the legal community. It would have been a career killer. But that's a common problem. I mean, people in academia tell me that they have that problem, law enforcement, air traffic controllers for sure. I think times are changing, and I think that attitude is improving somewhat. I published Incident at Devil's Den on Amazon in 2018, and I don't think it would have been nearly as well received even 3 years earlier. And I hope that that's a trend.
Oh, that's good to know, because I know people that have lost their families and friends because they came out about ETs and contacts and sightings. So I'm glad to hear it's changing.
It's just like a person going over to some other church and leaving their congeners behind. That's all.
That's a great example. And I'll tell you, I was surprised. I kind of found out who my true friends were. But I made so many more friends in the UFO community, that it's the UFO culture that I'm submerged in, that I don't miss them at all. I'm glad I'm here.
That's right.
Right. This is a rather large community. I guess people don't realize how many people have had experiences and sightings and have been involved in even in the military. What are you going to say, Sash?
Well, it's a matter of field, whether you're merging fields of consciousness with other people, and what is the field, and what are its parameters. And it's fascinating. You can feel it's if you source the energy, you can actually feel how wide it spreads and how much intensity it's got.
It's palpable. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Well, I jotted down some notes last time, and I want to get to the things that people ask me about the most. And one of the things that I'm asked about the most is when they had you inside that giant triangle. In case you missed it, my friend and I were abducted from our tent. We were remote. We were wilderness camping. We were out in the middle of nowhere. We weren't at a campsite. And the most common question is, what do you see while you were in there? Because I do have some memories. Now, I want to be clear. I've never had a complete linear memory of everything that happened while I was in there. But I do have some bits and pieces that have stuck with me over 40 years in the form mostly of nightmares.
Have you ever had regressions? You might have answered this last time, but when
I
do memory, I have Dr. Lessin regress me, and we go over, and there's usually, it's like the tip of an iceberg. When you explore memory, it's like, wow, there's all this detail and information you would never have gotten.
Memory has sub-memories.
Well said. Well, Kathleen Martin was kind enough to offer, and Yvonne Smith has offered.
We're offering anytime.
Yeah, I'm going to do that soon. I did have one regression regarding the. I think I talked about the April 16th, 2019 event where I had the weird reading on the iPhone. I think we covered that.
Yeah, but.
And I had a regression about that event, and we were going to go further, but unfortunately COVID got in the way, and my friend who does my regression is an MD who happens to be a psychiatrist, and but he's 70 years old, and he's maybe justly so. He's afraid of COVID, and it can wait a while. So we'll get around to it.
Right.
So on to what I saw, because that is the most common question. When I was in there, as I said earlier, when I woke up in the tent, I found out my shoes were unlaced and my socks were on sideways. I remember when I was in this thing, I was completely nude. They'd taken my clothes off, and I was holding my boots and my clothing in my hands in front of my chest. And I couldn't move anything except my eyes. I could roll my eyeballs around and look anywhere I wanted, but I couldn't turn my head up, down, or in any way whatsoever. Very similar to what Calvin Parker experienced. Now, I don't know to this day if we were in the same ship that we saw from the outside, because from the outside, this thing looked like a super Walmart. I mean, it was enormous. I describe it as being a city block long on each leg of the triangle. But from inside, if that's where we were, it made no sense, because the inside of this thing was as big as a football stadium. So I don't know if they took us to another location. That's what I suspect. But I could perceive that next to me was my friend Toby. He was beside me, and we were just kind of trying to take in everything we could see, because this thing was so massive, and there was like a big, huge open mezzanine that had to be 5 stories straight up, and all around the periphery there were walkways, and all these doorways that I'm sure had hallways that went down, and the little gray guys that I called the worker bees. And I may have mentioned this last time, but I think it's important. I don't think those things are thinking, living, sentient beings like you and I. I think they're more like robotic, But they're running all over the place. Everything inside the ship was either stainless steel or white like porcelain. There were, it was incredibly bright in there. The intensity of the light was so bad that I ended up with what the doctor called flash burns. It's what an arc welder would get if they didn't pull that hood down over their eyes. It's a sunburn to the cornea of your eye, and it's very painful. It feels like you have sand in your eyes.
I'm back with eye infections, and my eyes would be all puffed up. But I remember it was so bright. It was just too bright for human eyes.
Yeah, my eyes were swollen. And were you photophobic as well? I wanted to be in a dark room. Just put me in a dark place. Light hurt my eyes.
I had to go to work, so I didn't have much choice. I couldn't afford to miss work, so I got up and went to work, and my eyes were just puffy, and that happened several times. So I know they were taking me. It would be about once every month or 2 months or something. I'd have puffy eyes again.
Yeah. So
go ahead. So you said it was all white in there, and
everything was white.
And you thought that those rays that you saw were robots. They weren't conscious, or?
Yeah, well, I think they're highly intelligent, but I don't think they're sentient in the way that you and I are. I think they're probably some kind of artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, quantum computing, who knows what, but right. Some biological matter in there too. But but that's just conjecture on my part. It's just my guess. But
Did you bump him or touch him or anything?
No, I never did, but they manhandled me. I know that. And I can cite a couple instances of that where they put me on a table. When they dropped me back off, both Toby and I were dumped right next to my car, and we were 25 feet from the tent. And I'm only semi-conscious, but I remember thinking, man, somebody screwed up. They should have put us back in the tent. And I no sooner thought that than these 4 little guys came along, picked us up and dragged us and just kind of threw us into the tent. And then boom, I was out again. So, but the story I wanted to get to was that while I'm watching all these little gray guys running all over the place, and I saw a golf cart moving without wheels. That was interesting. But there was the 6-foot-tall figure who was not gray. His complexion was chalkish, pinkish, white. And he looked more human than the grays did, more humanoid. He had the big eyes, but not the exaggerated big eyes like you see in motion pictures. These were just like wraparound Ray-Ban eyes. I assume they were eyes. It could have been eye coverings. I don't know. They were jet black and kind of a liquid-looking reflective black, if that makes sense. Just an opening for ears, no earlobes, no nose visible, just 2 nostrils, a slit for a mouth.
The eye thing, was that like Geordie had on the second in the generation?
Star Trek, like Geordie's glasses, or?
I don't know. I've never watched Star Trek.
Oh, okay. No reference.
Sorry.
Okay. So they had slit for a mouth.
Wow.
Slit for a mouth. Yes. And I was straining my eyes to the left. And I saw this guy walk across in front of me. And I mean, you can tell by someone's walk, the way they carry themselves, who's in charge. And this guy looked like he was in charge. And I'm straining my eyes as far as I can to the left. And just by happenstance, he turns his head to the right, and we locked eyes. And that was the scariest event that happened to me on the ship. And that's been one of the nightmares I've had since 1977. And I have the recurring dream once or twice a year. And like most nightmares, I recognize it in my sleep, and it kind of has to play out to a certain extent before I can wake up. But
what's frightening about his looking him in the eyes? What's frightening about it?
Well, what happened was the second we locked eyes, and I know this is hard to wrap your head around, but And I don't know any better way to describe it, but this guy was in my head. I mean, he was in my head. He knew me. He knew my wife. He knew my coworkers. He knew my family. He knew my secrets. He knew everything about me. I felt like it had been downloaded to him. And I'm looking at these eyes, and what I see reflected back from them was just this feeling of like I was looking at like raw intellect.
Yeah.
I felt like this thing, whatever it was I'm looking at, is 500 rungs up the evolutionary ladder from me. You know, the best way I can describe it, I'll tell you my best description of this is when my kids were little, we had a dog, Astro, you know, and he was an English setter with these great big brown eyes, and he would come over and put his head in my lap, and I would pet him on the head and tell him he's a good boy, and he would look up at me with those big brown eyes, and I could see in his eyes the trust and the love. And I'm sure he's looking to my eyes as well. But he knew I was the alpha. You know, we each knew our respective roles in this relationship. And in this encounter with the 6-foot-tall entity, I felt like the dog.
That's
So,
a good description. Yeah, because you're totally raw. There's no hidden part of you, and humans walk around kind of hidden. You know, you don't know everything we're thinking, and that's our normal state of being. But when you lock eyes with these people, these beings, you're naked. You're completely naked.
I've used that exact term before because that's the feeling. It really is. You know, and I think there's a good reason why we can't, why humanity can't communicate telepathically. I don't think we're any of us are disciplined well enough to control our thoughts. I mean, I think it would just be disastrous.
Right.
Maybe one day. So.
Well, I think we can learn. I think once you're around the ETs for a long time, I mean, I've had conversations with Whitley Stryber, and I've had my own, and I think now that I've worked with them for 60-some years, I'm able to communicate with them, and I can take it. But back in the 70s, you're still new to it. It's like, oh
yeah,
yeah.
Well, my experience, and I believe I've had a whole lot of experiences that I don't remember, but in 2017, when I was working on my book, I was visited by this entity, 3 foot tall, petite. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a cheap wig, black wig, that was all kind of messed up, and we communicated telepathically. I talk about this in my book. I called her Betty. You know why I called her Betty? I called her Betty because the wig she was wearing reminded me of the hair on Betty Rubble from the Flintstones. Remember Flintstones back in the day?
Uh-huh.
So that's where she got the name Betty from. But
where did she appear to you?
I'm sorry?
Where did she appear? In your home?
In my home. I woke up sitting upright in my chair in the living room.
Uh-huh.
And I notice seating directly across from me is what appears to be a petite Asian woman dressed in black, with long black sleeves and 4 black kind of ugly fingers sticking out of it. And this wig is on sideways, and I didn't get it. Only until later did I see that the reason it didn't fit was it was made for a human head, and the back of her head was too bulbous. It was too large in back. And she had these oversized sunglasses that I don't know how she kept those on her face because she had no nose to set them on. I guess they were just kind of jammed up under the wig. But I had the thought, boy, I wish she'd take those sunglasses off. And when she did, I recognized her. And I recognized her as an entity that I used to call Sue when I was a kid. And Sue, when I was taken as a little kid, ages 4 through about 7, I knew her as Sue, and I recognized her immediately. And I know this sounds far-fetched, but I felt this immediate affection for her. I think I even may have said that last time. But not affection in a romantic way, affection more like a maternal figure. Um, and I had the thought, it's good to see you again. And she replied telepathically, it's good to see you, Terry. And I realized we were speaking telepathically.
Right.
And then, to emphasize my point I'd made earlier about the reason that mankind doesn't routinely speak telepathically was, and I should mention too, that calm feeling that I had whenever we first saw their ship, that calmness that washed over me. I had that going on, so I wasn't frightened, and I wasn't excited. It was all kind of matter of fact. So, but yeah, I remember her as Sue from being a kid. But the thought was, we're talking telepathically. What if I think of something wrong, and make her angry? Or what if I think of something inappropriate? Right. Well, what happens if you've got a classroom of fourth graders and you tell them not to think about elephants? What are they going to do? They're going to think about every kind of elephant you can think of for the next 5 hours.
You can't even think of the word inappropriate without getting inappropriate pictures.
I'll tell you, I'm embarrassed to say that everything that was inappropriate crossed my mind.
Of course.
And I swear she blushed. I mean, she told me telepathically, Terry, you can control your thoughts and keep some of your thoughts private if you just try. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, or if that was just said to make me feel better, but it did make me feel a little better. But it was embarrassing, and it does make the point that we as a species aren't really as disciplined as we give ourselves credit for, I don't think. So, I don't know.
I had this thought, like, where did she get the wig? What store did she go shopping at? How did she do that?
When I hear someone reading me like that, I say, all this just amounts to I like you.
Right.
Yes.
But I just had that thought about that. How in the world did she get a wig?
Well, where did she buy this black outfit? I mean, she was wearing, size 4 like nursing shoes that were black that had like a 2-inch heel on them, I guess to give her some additional height. I'll tell you, at first glance, the way that I saw her, were she to walk the streets of downtown Dallas, I mean, I don't think she'd draw much of a second look. But when she took off the glasses, I recognized the face. And
what was her face like?
No nose.
No nose.
Yeah. No nose, slit for a mouth, eyes that were big, about the same size as that 6 foot tall entity. And her complexion was, and I don't know if these things can present themselves in any manner that they choose, make us see them the way they want to be seen. I don't know.
Some of them can.
But it's possible.
Yeah.
So.
Not all species, yeah.
But she was the same entity I saw as a kid, as
Had a soul, or was sentient. It wasn't like the little grays running around the ship, right? That you thought were robotic.
Yes.
AI. She's not AI.
No, she's not. As a matter of fact, in my book, I explained that she told me that she was a hybrid being.
Oh.
She told me that in just, without hesitation.
Did she say she was hybrid humans? Some beings are, they have a little bit of mantis, a little bit of gray, a little bit of human, a little bit of reptilian. Did she tell you her composition?
Well, not directly, but what she did was she kept referring to her hosts, Hosts, hosts. And, host is an interesting word. I mean, you can use it as a verb. You can host a dinner party. You can be a host of a dinner party. So, I mean, there's a couple of different meanings to the word. And my thought was, what do you mean host? What are you talking about? What's a host? Because a host could be in a symbiotic, parasitic type relationship. There's
right.
Lots of, could be bad things. And she says, and this I thought was kind of almost poetic. She says, you call them aliens. I call them my host because they're not alien to me. So there you go. Take from that what you will.
So that implies that
she's read Goethe.
To me, that implies that she is in a body that's not her own. She's in she's an avatar, or the body is her avatar.
Well, your guess is as good as mine. I wish I knew more. I mean, I wish she had been taking questions, but it didn't quite operate that way. It was pretty much a one-sided conversation.
See, I've asked questions and they answered them. So next time, just ask whatever you want to ask. They are more than willing to answer at least a lot of them. I don't know if they.
Well, she did answer some of my questions. Like, what are you doing here? And does this have anything to do with the things that are in my leg?
Okay.
And she answered that straight up and said yes, in regard to both. I'm here because of the things in your leg. And at that time, I was having trouble trying to get a surgeon to remove them for me because I got a bad cardiac history. I had a stent in place in 2011 and a triple bypass in 2005, and a pacemaker and some other heart disease issues. And the only way that I could get surgery would be with a cardiac clearance letter. And no cardiologist would give me one. Not in this country anyway. It's the standard of care. Mm-hmm. So in October of 2017, I got the idea to go to a Mexican surgeon in Tijuana and have just the thing above my knee removed. The thing that looked like an electrical device, the thing that's square on the x-ray about the size of my fingernail. And I just had a conversation with the gentleman. We were talking about, a 3-day stay in Tijuana and talking about the details. And she says, my host will not allow this to fall into the hands of terrestrial scientists. That cannot happen. And she said, if you continue on that route, my host will remove it from your leg. And they did. They did just a couple of weeks later, November 17th. I woke up 3 weeks later and in a lot of pain. And I had bruising on top of my legs. And I don't know, did I cover this last time?
No, I don't think so.
So did the x-ray show the thing was gone?
Yes. I got the x-ray from the chiropractor showing that it had gone and disappeared. So
did the x-ray show the shape of it?
I'm sorry?
The x-ray, did it show the shape of it?
The bloody cavity.
Oh, no, it didn't show a cavity or anything. There was no trace of it. It just was gone. Right. But I've had mixed emotions about that. On one hand, I'm glad that thing is out of me because it's a reminder of them putting their hands on me. But on the other side of the coin is I would have liked to have it taken out under my conditions, my terms, taken out, forensically, like they would if you had a bullet wound in a criminal act. They have a protocol they go through to preserve the integrity of the evidence. And that's what I wanted to do, have it removed by a surgeon under that kind of protocol.
Did your heart condition improve when the thing was out?
I won't say it's improved, but it's not worsened. So whatever they did was at least benign. Now, I will say this, that it's very important, is that I thought it was gone. I didn't see anything. And the chiropractor, who, of course, looks at 100 x-rays a week, calls me up and says, well, did you look at your x-ray? I said, yeah. He says, well, did you see what they left inside you? And I said, no, because I didn't. And he says, yeah. He says, they left 2 wires inside you. And I'm like, two wires? Why would if these things are so highly evolved, how could they be so inept as to leave a couple wires in me? And this guy was an experiencer, or has dealt with so many experiencers that he is one by proxy, because he just chuckled and he said, they don't do anything by accident. What they gave you was an upgrade. That's the 2017 model of what they put in you in 1977. Yeah. And I have. I have the x-rays right in my drawer here. I have a picture of it in the back of my book, but it's really hard to see because it's pixelated. It's not the way to see it really sharp is to look at the actual x-ray against the light source. And you can see there are two tiny wires about a little less than a centimeter in length, and they're parallel to one another and bent, just the slightest bit at the ends. And they lie right in the middle of my leg, between my thigh and my knee, and right next to my femur.
So what do you think the purpose of that implant is? And then you can ask your question.
I think the chiropractor, I think what they did was they gave me an updated version. They took out something that they were afraid that I was going to have taken out and examined. And, they took out their merchandise, and in the process, they still left me with something.
What I'm asking is, what was its function? Because I once had this lady psychic who just started telling me about my implants, and she said, this one protects you against STDs, this one protects you against this, and that. This one is they track you, this one they communicate with you, so I had about 6 or 7, and she just went around my body, and I had no prior conversation with her. And I said, how did she, where these things were and what they were about? But looking back on it, it was a very mysterious encounter. I don't think she was human. I don't think she was human. She looked like a human, but I wasn't close to her. She was across the room sitting in a chair, and suddenly she started telling me all these things. But I wasn't supposed to get them removed, either through surgery or, some kind of psychic surgery. In no way, shape, or form, because they were protecting me. Now, I don't know if that was a lie or true, but I'm thinking that yours had some function, maybe something to do with your, because they know what your genetics are. They scan your body, and they probably knew that you were going to have heart problems down the line because their technology is, 50 million years in advance of ours. So maybe they put that in the 70s. That was
and I can't blame my heart disease on ET here. I mean, I'm genetically predisposed to it, and I didn't eat the healthiest diet for about 20 years, but I did run every day. But no, I can't blame my heart disease on them. I don't think. But what I think they're for? I think it's a tracking device of some kind. I think that they're just gathering information about me. Just like if we tag an animal in the Serengeti plain and put a chip in it, that's going to monitor its migratory patterns, where it goes, probably, when it dies, when it reproduces. I mean, who knows what all information they can gather from that. So, figure, ET must know everything about me. And I feel like a steady subject, like.
My family has weak heart, so they might have things in me to make it so I don't go into heart failure or something. My whole family's kind of predisposed to that. So I'm thinking when they first got you when you were young, they're patient. They knew you have some potential heart problems. I'm just guessing. Yeah.
Well, there's a guy I met at UFOCon in San Francisco just this February named Steve Colburn.
Yeah, I know Steve.
You know Steve? Okay. Because I walked up and I said, hey, how you doing? Introduced myself. He had not read my book, did not know who I was, but offered to do a scan of my body. Now, the thing above my leg, we all know, was removed and replaced with the upgraded version. He didn't find anything above my leg. The things that were below my leg in a symmetrical pattern are still there. They're absolutely still there. But he had no way to know that, and I didn't tip him off in any way, shape, or form. And sure enough, he stops at my right calf with a some kind of instrument, and says, "The calf of your leg muscle here is highly magnetic." And he said, that's very strange. But he said they can do that. They can magnetize muscle or wood or anything they want to. But he said, he says, you have something strange going on down here. So I told him, I said, yeah, you're spot on. You're right about that. So
what else did you see inside the craft? So you're in the craft. There's
Oh,
always
yes.
little rays running around. There's the guy that's in charge. What else happened?
Okay, this is the other memory that I have. And that was that, well, I should mention, when I first had my wits about me, I was aware that Toby was to my left, and I heard a woman screaming, and that really scared me. It scared me because it didn't, you know, screams come out in different kinds of character. I mean, you could jump out and say boo, and somebody will scream ah, and everybody has a good laugh at their expense. And but there, then there's a kind of pain that you get, from a dental drill or stuck in the side with a pin or something. This was a pain scream. Is the only way I know how to describe it. So I was hearing a woman being hurt, and that has bothered me. The other thing that I saw that I think is very important, and I didn't get to even touch on, was that there were other humans on board this thing. There were 6 or 7. It's either 6 or 7. Of these humans that were all our age, 19 to 22. They all wore military haircuts. They all wore tan flight suits. Now, I was in the Air Force. I didn't know any service that wore tan flight suits. None. I mean, they were either the dark green or the blue, but not this tan color. But they wore these tan colored flight suits, and I swear they wore, GI issue combat boots. It sure looked like to me. And they were as human as you or I. I mean, they were, these weren't hybrids. And they wore, on their uniforms, they had an orange patch on the left side of their shoulders. And they walked with their left side. They walked across our field of view. Again, we can only move our eyes. But the guy in front, a tall redheaded kid, walked over to a panel on the wall. Now I'm seeing it sideways, so I can't see what he's doing, but he's waving his hand and like he's pressing buttons or something. And these guys won't look at us, I'm blinking my eyes, SOS, thinking I could maybe get their attention or something. They will not look at us. And this guy worked at this panel for a while, and then they just all walked away. They never said a word. And that's one of the things I'd like to recover in regression is what did that patch look like? I know that it was orange and maybe 3 or 4 inches in diameter and circular, and it had some white writing on it, but I would love to know what it said. They were just too far away for me to see it. That plus the situation with the bright lights didn't help. But yeah, so that's the one set of humans that I saw. The pathetic set of humans that I saw.
They seemed to be serving on board that ship. They were humans working for.
Oh, absolutely. These were crew members. These were absolutely crew members. There's no doubt in my mind. And they were human. Now, I don't know if they were humans from Earth. I suspect they were. But like I said, they were.
Did they appear to have a certain race? Were they white or Asian or?
They were white except for the woman. There was one woman who was a kind of a petite, kind of a cute young Asian woman with, Hispanic woman. Did I say Asian?
Yeah,
I meant to say Hispanic, Latino, whatever's most appropriate, with her hair pulled back in a ponytail. And she was only about like 5'2" or something. She was very short. And the guys were kind of tall, so she stood out in that regard. So, yeah. But other than that, the other guys were white. I didn't see any other ethnicity. And like I said, they did their best to completely ignore us.
Right.
When we first.
I've heard of that. So that that's the shape. The triangular shape is supposed to be reverse engineered, and human military, we're supposed to be involved in those triangular ships.
Well, there's a couple different theories on that. David Marler holds himself out to be the world's authority on triangular shaped craft, and I think he might be. And he can tell you all about them. But TC3B thing or whatever you call it. He said those were 1 story tall. And the thing that I saw in 1977 was also seen in the Hudson Valley, identical to what we saw.
Right.
The thing we saw was 5 stories tall. So this was like an office building. It was not the conventional 3, whatever they call it, that they claim is one of ours. This was different. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't one of ours, but
I've heard from different people I've interviewed that the Phoenix Lights are human. We have them. They're reverse engineered. So we have the smaller TR3B and the larger TR3 or something. What's the number of the Phoenix Light one? Anyway, I have it written down somewhere. I've interviewed people.
We're on the same page. Yeah.
Phoenix Light one is the they both can go interstellar, but that one they use to do missions outside the solar system and look for habitable planets for colonies.
You know, I left this with the feeling that there are a couple of possibilities, and that is that ET and humans are working in concert toward a shared objective. And that's why there were human beings aboard that craft. Now, there were another set of human beings I need to get to, too. But we're talking about crew members here. So,
Okay.
And the other possibility is that maybe they're here to abduct people. And I have a reason for stating that. When Toby and I were first aware that we were in there, and this is probably the dream that haunts me the most, and I guess it's maybe survivor guilt or something, but to my right, to my far right, I could see a group of what looked like anywhere between 20 and 50 people. They were lined up, and I couldn't get my eyes to move far enough to see the full depth of where they were standing. But there were all these people standing, at attention like we were, with their clothing in their hands too. And their eyes are darting all over the place, like mine are. And these people were all crying. And what bothered me so bad about it was that it was a mixed bag of men, women, and children. It wasn't just men. And we watched this thing take off, and I just wonder what happened to those people. You know, did they Uber them home, or did they let them out somewhere? I hope so, but I don't know. I don't know what happened to those people. But I know, I think we were segregated off to the side from them, and I'm glad we were.
So what did they do to you on the ship?
This is the last memory that I have. Again, I only have, for being in there 4 or 5 hours, there's a lot that happened that I don't have access to. But one of the things that happened was that I was aware that Toby was gone. I don't know how I was aware, but I was aware somehow that he was gone. And I heard him scream. And I heard him say, oh my God, expletive, no, no, no. And then he screamed. And that really scared me. That scared me really bad because I knew my turn was coming, you know.
Uh-huh.
And it did. And I had 2 of these little guys, and we were on a motorized walkway. The walkway moved under my feet. I didn't step. I didn't walk. It was just like I was gliding along the floor. So I assume it was some kind of like motorized walkway or something, but I'm gliding along the floor. And we went down one of these hallways. And to my right, this was interesting, to my right was a row of what I took to be fish tanks. And they were all filled with a pinkish colored water. And not all, but half of them. But they were varied in sizes, from a conventional fish tank like you'd have in your living room to as big as and tall enough to accommodate a human being. Like I say, some had pink water in them. I did see one Again, I couldn't turn my head to the right, so this is only what I could see from my peripheral vision. You know how when a puppy is newborn, it has these folds of skin all over the place. I saw inside one of these tanks in kind of a sleeping position in the middle was what I took to be a puppy. It had the folds of skin and it had an umbilical cord. And as I'm gliding past it, it opened an eye, and that really startled me. That really scared me. Then I knew the thing was alive. Whatever I was looking at was a living thing. And at the end of the hallway, there was a white domed room with a standard porcelain, looked like an operating table, right in the center of the room. I mean, it didn't have linen on it. It didn't have a mattress or anything of the sort. It was just a porcelain table. And the little guys took my clothing out of my hands, and two of them maneuvered me up and onto this table. And there was this other entity that was taller than the 6-foot tall entity that I saw earlier. And this thing was probably 7 feet tall, and it was an insectoid. It looked like a praying mantis. It had the giant bulbous eyes. It had the triangular shaped head. It had, and you know what is crazy about this is, this didn't scare me as much as, Pinky did when he got in my head. This whole misadventure kind of had more of a medical vibe to it. And what's crazy is whenever I picture him in my head, I always see him in a white lab coat. Now I'm sure this thing wasn't wearing a white lab coat, but maybe that's a projected image, or maybe he was. I don't know, but that's how I see him. And I felt less afraid. I felt like this is more medical than it is, a torture session. And they were doing something in my lower back, and I had not been anesthetized, and it hurt a lot. And I'm screaming, and they're ignoring me. And I call him Dr. Bug. And Dr. Bug is working on my lower back, my spine, and I had early onset of degenerative spine disease that I give Dr. Bug credit for, but he didn't kill me. So I'm on this table, I'm filling my lungs with air, and I'm screaming as loud as I can scream. And nothing. I can't hear anything come out of my mouth. It's just nothing. And I must have been screaming because Dr. Bug turns around and telepathically, I heard him crystal clarity in the center of my head said, "Why are you screaming? Stop screaming. You know we don't hurt you. You know we take you back. Now stop screaming." And he reached over with this green digit, the finger, and tapped me on the forehead, and I was out. And then the next memory I had was when they dropped us, we were dumped by the car somehow. Then, the other thing that I noticed too was that there were stainless steel instruments that he was using. And I see them kind of like hanging from somewhere up near the ceiling, but I didn't see from where, but it was a white domed room. And I remember being kind of surprised that this porcelain table was so warm. And I thought, oh, that's nice. At least they warmed the table for me. And then I realized it's warm because there had been so many human bodies on it before. That's the reason it was warm. It wasn't for my comfort, I don't think. But again.
I have a question about the other humans.
Yes.
Was your friend Toby was African American, correct?
That's right.
Was he the only African American, or were the other people of different races?
I only saw white people, but again, they were stacked in rows. So there were 5 across the front row, but I saw a man, a woman, and a child, and then there were people in back of them that went back, and they were lined up like you would line up on a parade ground. I mean, they were in rows, But the people that I saw were all Caucasian. There was a little girl, a woman that could have been her mother, and then their dad, and then just a middle-aged white guy, you know. There were people in back of them, but I could not get a good look at them from my perspective. And I'm guessing there were somewhere 20 people, maybe, could have been as high as 50. I don't know how far back those rows went. There's a lot of people, you know.
A lot of people.
And I'll
Now,
tell you,
when you got dropped off, were they carrying you? Were you levitating?
I have no idea how we got off of that thing. I don't know how they got us there. It's just, I was boom on the ground by the car, and Toby was next to me, and I was only barely conscious. I did not have my wits about me. I was conscious and awake enough to think, yeah, somebody screwed up. They should have put us back in the car or back in the tent.
Right.
And then they did. So I don't know how they transferred us. You know, I remembered when I saw those little guys sucked up by that beam of light, like I spoke about last time. You know, if they could do that, surely they could do the same thing in reverse.
Right. So they just beamed you down, perhaps, and dropped you in one place. But then they came and dragged you. See, I remember being carried at one point like a surfboard. And yeah, but they could drag you by your hands or drag you by your feet. You know, how were they dragging you?
They dragged me by my arms.
By your arms.
Yeah.
They just dragged you.
I
Well, you're
remember that.
probably heavy compared to them. Yeah. All right. So did they put you back in the right place in the tent, or the right tent, or were you in?
Upside down.
And did you get your clothes on yet? Yeah.
Well, they just kind of threw us in. I mean, I was in the same spot that I was when they took us out. So, I mean, I don't know if that was planned. I mean, they had a 50-50 shot at getting it right by chance. So, but I was on the left side of the tent as you look in, and that's where I went to sleep. So, at least we were that way correct. And my head was toward the back of the tent, which is where it was whenever I woke up.
Oh, okay. And did you have your clothes on or off at that point?
My clothes were on. On. As a matter of fact, that's one of the first things I noticed was when I sat up, other than feeling a lot of pain, when I sat up, that I saw my boots were unlaced. So somebody else had dressed me because my socks were on sideways, and I would never have done that. I would never have left my boots unlaced.
Right. What about Toby?
You know, we never talked about how he was dressed. I mean, there was just this was a life-changing event for us. And in some ways, and I've heard this from other people where you have, you know, two friends or a group of friends even, and I've got a lot of emails about this. People tell me that they've experienced this. You know, they see something with a group of friends, and then afterward, nobody really talks about it. And one reason or another, everybody kind of drifts away. If you've ever read I think it's Dan Fowler is his name, the guy that wrote the book about the Allagash Four. That was a tight group of four, you know, good friends who all kind of drifted away. Even the two brothers drifted away. So that's a fairly common phenomenon. But I can tell you this, on our way back, I felt different about my friend. I mean, just, you know, 10 hours earlier, he was my best friend in the world, you know. And after this, I didn't want anything to do with the guy. And I could not understand that. I couldn't understand it then. I don't understand it today, except that I think that it was through some kind of influence. That wasn't my normal, that's not the way I treat my friends. And so, but it was definitely, because that's one of the things I was going to talk about that I didn't get to last time, was the last time I had an opportunity to see Toby.
What happened?
Oh, we're going to be breaking 2 minutes, so go ahead. break is coming up in 2.
Yeah, I'll get it started here. When we got back and we were seen by the hospital, we were ordered to have no contact with one another. And the hospital commander told me, you're to have no contact with Sergeant Tobias in any way, shape, or form, not verbally, not in writing, not through third parties. You're to give him nothing, he's to give you nothing, on and on and on and on. And he said, Sergeant, if you disobey my order, there will be consequences. Do you understand me? And I said, yes, sir, I do understand it. But no, I really didn't understand. I didn't understand what was going on. And it was just strange. So I knew that I wanted to go and see Toby one last time. And my wife was resistant to that idea. And she's like, Terry, don't mess with these OSI people. They scare me. But I did. I would go back and see him one last time. And I'll get into that, but it'll take a few minutes.
Great. Well, we can do that after the break. And so a little preview about the second hour. What else are you going to cover?
I'd like to cover what I saw as a kid at age 8 and 11, years 1963 and 1966, when I saw some flying saucers, or a flying saucer. Because that's kind of an interesting story. I want to get into that. And then if we have time, about the OSI interrogation that I had.
Okay, we'll have to fit it all in. So we have one more hour. We'll be taking a break here. We'll be back in about 4 minutes. Is the music? There it is. Okay, see you in 4. Please mute. Thanks.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings.
Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious
so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix, and I'm Janet Care Lessin with Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, our producer Debra DeFranco. You're listening to Revolution Radio, Studio B, and we're talking to Terry Lovelace, and this is part 2. We had a discussion with him previously a couple weeks ago. But before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind you to go over to revolution.radio to the top left tab, and you can make your one-time donation or go to the Patreon button and make your recurring donation. And we do want to thank you very much for joining us and contributing. So I'm going to have Sasha say something. He's here. Are you back, sweetheart?
Something.
So we're going to talk about what happened when Terry met with Toby the final time, his 1963 and 1966 sightings, and then the interrogation. We have 1 hour to get 4 major parts in. Take away, Terry. We're listening.
Okay. Well, as I stated earlier, I'd been ordered by my hospital commander to have no contact with Toby whatsoever. And I'd also mentioned that for some reason I had a change about the way I feel about the guy. I mean, here this guy was my best friend. I mean, we worked together for 3 years. We socialized together. You know, we both lived on base housing, so we were close. My wife and his wife were friends. So, but for some strange reason, I wanted nothing to do with the guy. But I felt like I owed him a goodbye. I did feel like I owed him that. And we were given 30 days off. We were burnt so badly. We had like this terrible sunburn, and we were sick. So we were off duty, and we were coming home from the base exchange where we did our grocery shopping. My wife we were in her car in Gia. She was driving. And I begged her, I said, you know, Toby just lives 4 blocks from us. I said, swing by Toby's house. I just want to run in and say goodbye to the guy. And we kind of had a back and forth about that, but she relented and she pulled over in front of Toby's house, and I hopped out and I ran up to the front door, same front door I'd walked through 100 times before. But this time I knocked and I said, announced myself, and I said, hey guys, it's me. And I stepped in, and as I stepped in, Toby's wife, Tammy, is walking down the hallway with something in her hands. It was a lamp, it was a box, it was something. They were getting ready to move because they shipped him off to Japan at light speed. You know, they kept the two of us separated, so I guess we couldn't put our stories together. She gave me a hard look and said, "You're not supposed to be here." And I said, "Yeah, look, I know, but you guys are going to Japan, I heard, and you know, I just wanted to say goodbye to you." And she just kept walking. Toby heard this exchange, and he came out of the bedroom and around the hallway. And I had never seen him like this before. He was a train wreck. You know, he was curled up on the seat of my old Chevy for the whole ride back from Devil's Den. And I think whatever they did to me, they gave him a double measure. I think they really hurt him in some way. When he came around the corner, I could see his hair was all sideways. He hadn't shaved. He was in a dirty T-shirt. He had on jeans. He was barefoot. Now, I understand when you're moving, but still, it was out of character for him. And he walked up to me, and it felt awkward, and it shouldn't have, and I don't know why. And I could perceive that he felt it was awkward. And I wanted to hug the guy because I thought that would have been appropriate, but I didn't. And instead, I held out my hand, and he held out his, and we did this inelegant kind of a finally, made contact, awkward handshake. And I shook his hand, and Toby was shorter than I am, so he's looking up at me, and I could smell vodka on his breath. And that was very out of character, vodka or some kind of hard liquor, because Toby wasn't a drinker. Maybe a can of beer at a barbecue, but that was it. His eyes were bloodshot. That could have been the result of the eye injuries we suffered, but, it could have been liquor too. And he looked up at me, and I didn't know what to say. I think I stumbled and said, "I just want to wish you guys well." And he said, "It happened, didn't it, Terry?" And I said, "Yes, my brother, it really happened. You're not losing your mind." And he said, "Yeah, but why us?" And I broke eye contact with him. I looked down at my shoes and said, "Man, I don't have a clue." And with that, I ran out of the front door. And I felt like I just wanted to get out of the situation as quickly as I could. And that makes no sense. When two people go through the kind of experience that Toby and I went through together, and you live through it, we should be, two old guys having a barbecue at his house talking about, yeah, you remember this, you remember that. That's the way it should be. That's the right way. But it didn't work out that way. And,
did the MPs catch you?
No. Well, yeah, kind of. They didn't catch me in terms of putting handcuffs on me, but they did. I don't know if I mentioned this in my book or not. I think I did. They, when I came out of the house, there were two MPs in a blue squad car parked directly right on Sheila's bumper. And then there was a truck in front of her. So they had her kind of boxed in. But she had about 1.5 feet in front of her. She could wiggle out of it if she wanted, but she was hysterical. When I got back to the car, she's like, "Oh my God, Harry, what are they going to do?" I'm like, "Look, calm down, baby. If they were going to arrest us, we'd be in handcuffs by now. Just, get a hold of yourself, take a deep breath." I said, "You've parallel parked 100 times. Just wiggle out of this and take us home." And she says, "What if they pull us over?" I said, "Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Just calm down, wiggle out of here, and take us home." And she did. And a couple blocks down the way, she pulled into our driveway and went up to the front door. And she was kind of pulling herself together. I had groceries in my hand. I went up and got the key in the front door. And as I'm unlocking the door, I could hear my phones ringing inside, my wall phone in the kitchen. So I kind of hurried in, and I dropped my stuff on the table, and I picked up the phone, said hello, and I heard this OSI agent, the same one that came and talked to me when I was in the hospital room. And he said, "Well, you just couldn't do it, could you, son?" He said, you had to go and talk to your buddy one last time, didn't you?" And I didn't know what to say. And he used an expletive or two and said, "It really makes me angry when someone disobeys an order." And I said, I didn't know what to say. I said, "Sir, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say goodbye. That's all." I said goodbye, and that was it. And he did ask me, he said, "Did you give him anything, or did he give you anything?" Because I think they think we were hiding film. That's what I really suspect. Again, that's a supposition on my part, but that's what I think. And he said, "Watch your behind, Lovelace, because I'm sure watching you." And he hung up. I hung up. So Yeah, they did follow me.
Wow.
They did follow us. So
You have a
So that-
transponder in you. You have a transponder in you.
maybe on the carbon Gia too. I don't know.
Right.
Wow.
But that was the last time I saw Toby. There's a whole lot more to Toby's story, but I don't think we have time to cover it. It's a good, probably 30-minute story in itself. But I have a second book coming out that hopefully my editor said it'll be out November 1st, which means Thanksgiving. So we'll see. We'll see. But in that, I tell the whole story. So the OSI interrogation, I want to get to because that's fairly dramatic.
So you want to do your sightings when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, let me do those because I think those are important because I think those kind of set the stage, and those in my mind set in stone that these things have been part of my life,
right?
Forever. Now, I had memories of being taken as a kid on these what I call play dates, where I met with other kids and played with them, and Sue was in charge of us. But they were separate and distinct from this. I explained in my book, I saw these monkeys in my room, and that's when they used to take me. And I think what they do is I think that they can appear to a child and what the child will think is most benign. Like I had a cousin my age in Arkansas, northern Arkansas, in Jonesboro, Arkansas, who was seeing clowns, circus clowns, right. 2.5 feet tall. I put an email on the back of my first book and I said, if you've had an experience, I'm not a therapist or a doctor, but if you'd like to share it, email me. Well, since, March of 2018, over 1,400 people have. And yeah, so I've had people tell me that they've had owls and raccoons, Disney characters, glowing orbs, little gray men, a coat hanger would come out of the closet and talk to him, one guy. And just an amazing array of people that had the same experience, just with different things when they were my age. But to get back to what I saw, this was 1963. I'm 8 years old. I'm in my backyard, 8 years old, 1963. Had an uncle gave me an adult bow and arrow set, right? With target arrows, metal tips on them. Now, I certainly wouldn't have given my kids at age 8, such a lethal thing, and let them just go play with it. But I guess, it was 1963. I guess it was a different time. I don't know. But I lived in an urban part of the city, of St. Louis City, and there were brick row houses with tiny yards. And I had a bale of hay set up at the end of one end of the yard, and then I stood at the other, and I was firing arrows at this bale of hay. And it was a busy afternoon. And I think it was a weekday. I know it was in May. I think it was a weekday because I could hear the windows were open. It was a beautiful day, and I could hear my mom's soap operas. So I'm thinking it was a weekday. And there were just a ton of people out. It was a beautiful day. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was early afternoon. And I could hear the usual, women were hanging up their laundry, men were cutting grass. I could hear cars on the road and trucks and kids and people and just a lot of activity going on all around me. Not right next to me, but in the neighborhood. The neighborhood was just alive with people on a nice Saturday afternoon. And as I'm loading an arrow, I'm looking downward and I'm loading the notch of the arrow into the bowstring. And I saw this perfectly round shadow move across my feet. And instinctively, I looked up, and right over my head was this I called it a flying saucer. I don't think UFO was in the vocabulary then, if maybe. And but I'd seen television shows, Lost in Space, and I don't know others. And I looked up, and it was maybe 30 feet in diameter, I'm seeing the underside of it only, and it's made out of some kind of highly polished metal, like highly polished aluminum or something. And it was kind of wobbling a little bit in the breeze. And I don't know how far above my head it was. I'm not a good judge of distance in that regard, but I'd say it was probably 50 feet, maybe less. But the second I laid eyes on it, there were two things that were noticeable, and that was I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. I thought that, I mean, the word sexy wasn't in my vocabulary when I was 8, but I don't remember what word I used, but it was beautiful in the way that like a brand new sports car is on a showroom floor. And I mean, I knew a little bit about things that fly. I'd put together model airplanes, and I'm looking and I don't see any propulsion system. I don't see any nuts or bolts or seams. It's just this seamless sheet of aluminum. And I thought that was odd. And the other thing that was really odd was there was a very distinct auditory change. All the sounds in the neighborhood suddenly became muffled, and it sounded like and muted, like somebody turned the volume down, and it sounded like I'd had both my hands pressed hard against my ears, if that makes sense. Things were just muffled, and I looked at it, and it wobbled a bit. And my mind's racing because I don't see USAF or CCCP or any kind of identifiers on the thing. And this is strange. For some reason, I had the idea that if I lay down on the ground, I could get a better look at it. You know, I mean, that makes no sense, but that's what I did for some reason. And while I'm laying on the ground looking at it, I'm feeling just satisfied. Is the best way I can describe it. And I don't know how long I watched this thing, some minutes. And then it kind of listed to one side and shot off like from 0 to 500 miles an hour. And I could see the hole in the sky. I call it a hole in the sky. Of course, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. There wasn't a literal hole, but the spot where it vanished. I had my eyes glued on. And you know, the whole time that I lived in that house, every time I went in the backyard, my eyes went immediately to that spot. But I watched it take off, and it was gone. And then as soon as it was gone, then all the noises came back. And I yelled, I stood up and I yelled, "Mom," you know, as loud as I could. And my poor mother, she told me years later that she thought I'd shot the neighbor in the head or something. You know, she comes running out and runs over to me and does a quick check to see if there's any blood. And, you know, of course there's not. And I'm excited. I'm like, "Mom, did you see it? It was a real flying saucer. Did you see it?" And she's like, "Stop saying that. Come in the house." And she dragged me in the house. And I kept saying flying saucer. And she kept saying, "Shut up. Don't say that. Don't say that." And, you know, she said, "Terry, I don't know what you saw, but you did not see a flying saucer." And I said, "But Mom, I did. It was a flying saucer." And she says, "No, what you saw was a jet, Terry. You know what jets are." And I said, "Yeah, I know what jets are. It wasn't a jet." And she said, "Well, maybe it was a balloon." And she gets out our 1-volume encyclopedia that we have and goes and shows me a picture of the Hindenburg. "No, that's not it, Mom." You know, gives me a piece of paper and says, "Draw it." And I said, "Sure." And I drew a circle and handed it back to her because that's what I saw. And, you know, I could not understand why adults wouldn't believe me. That was just shocking to me because, I mean, I was a straight kid. I didn't tell lies. I was just a very straight kid. And but no one would believe me. And my mom said, "You can't tell people you saw a flying saucer. If you do, they'll think there's something wrong with you." And then she says, "They'll think there's something wrong with us." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I get it. You know, 1963, I get it."
Okay, what's wrong with you, but not us.
So that was the first time I saw a flying saucer. And
before we get to the 66 episode, I forgot to let Debra ask. She usually asks a question or makes a comment. Debra, do you have any questions or comments? My apologies for right after the commercial break.
No, I want to hear about the OIS investigation.
Oh, yeah, the OSI, sure. Well, let me cover 1966 real quick, and I'll go there, and I think we'll have time. 1966, I am 11 years old, and I'm in my bedroom. It had been a perfectly normal day. I don't recall if it was a weekday or must have been because the next day was a school day. But my mom tucked me in, as much as you do when you're 11, and said goodnight and shut my door, and I went to sleep. And nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary at all. Sometime, and I don't know what time it was, sometime early in the morning, I woke up and there were these flashing lights, and it was very similar to what happened in 1977, 11 years later, when I saw the lights flashing through the canvas of that tent. But these were orange or yellow kind of, maybe greenish and white. And they were flashing and they were bright. I mean, they were as bright as like a flash bulb going off. And they were coming through. This house was really old. And in the wintertime, this was January. And it was a bitterly cold night. And we had Venetian blinds covered with heavy drapes. So I think, I'm 11 years old. I'm thinking flashing lights. I bet there's a fire across the street, right? So I want to get up and see the fire truck. I walk over to the window and I pull back the curtain and I raise up the Venetian blind and I look out and here is another flying saucer. And I'm looking down at it and I'm looking at what I think is the top side because now I can see the top of this thing. And I don't know, it could have been the same one for all I know, but it was directly outside my second story window with this big cloud of like steam underneath it. I could have opened that window and stepped right on top of the platform. The lights were coming from a dome in the center that just kept flashing different colored lights. And I remember I was fascinated looking at the lights, and I was trying to hold the curtains back and hold this slat of this Venetian blind up, and it was awkward. So I took this curtain and I tucked it in to the Venetian blinds so that I could look at this thing hands-free. And that's what I did. And I was thrilled. You know what I thought? I thought, most people go through a whole lifetime and never see anything. Well, here I am. I'm 11, and this is the second time I saw one. And I think it's the same one, And I had this weird feeling that they came to see me. And that made me feel kind of smug or special, And the thought crossed my mind, they didn't take a wrong turn at Albuquerque. They came right to my house. They were there to either see me or to be seen. And I'll tell you, after my first experience at age 8, I didn't scream or yell or tell anybody. I never told a soul about that sighting until I wrote the book. But, I watched it for a few seconds or minutes. I don't know. And then I went back to bed. I had this disinterest all of a sudden and went back to bed and went back to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I didn't remember it at first. And I got up, and as I threw my legs over the bed and looked to my left, that's when I saw the curtain tucked in, and it all came flooding back to me. And I knew it wasn't a dream. I'm the one that tucked that curtain in the Venetian blinds, and I know the reason that I did it. So it validated that for me. And I felt very good about that. So, and that was the last thing I would see anything or experience anything extraterrestrialized for 11 years until I'm 22 years old, when we had the event in June of 1977.
That you remember.
That I'm aware of. That's right.
Yes.
That's absolutely right. So,
all right. So
now
I'm not to the interrogation.
Yes. Let me segue right into that. I said last time that while we were in the hospital, the two OSI agents, the short guy with the flat top haircut, and then the taller guy in his early 30s, came to see me at the hospital. and interrogated me. And I mean, I didn't know it at the time. I mean, I was 22 years old. I had no life experience to speak of. I didn't have the benefit of a law degree, certainly, to know what my rights were. But I worked a couple years as a prosecutor, and I understand interrogation techniques. And in retrospect, that's all he was trying to do, was intimidate me, let me know who's boss, and try to ensure that I told him the truth. So, but I did tell him that, because he asked me, he says, all I want to know how many pictures you took of it. I want your film and your camera. And I said, sir, I didn't take a single picture, which was the truth. So,
yeah.
This is about 8 weeks after we got back. And while Toby was wrapping up work at the hospital, I had been reassigned to a supply unit and was just doing menial, busy work. And I got a call from the squadron commander. Actually, the first sergeant told me the squadron commander wanted to see me right away. So I ran. This is 9 o'clock in the morning. I ran down to his office and, went through the whole military courtesy thing. And he said, Sergeant Lovelace, the OSI people would like to speak with you. They're sending a car over. It should be out front now. If I were you, I wouldn't keep them waiting. And I said, yes, sir. And I was gone like a shot. I made a stop in the bathroom, checked my appearance, made sure, my uniform was right and everything, and ran out the front door. And sure enough, right as I exit the front door, this blue squad car pulls up. And this senior airman hops out and asks me, Sergeant Lovelace? And I'm like, well, I'm in uniform. I got a name tag on. But I said, yes, I'm Sergeant Lovelace. And he opened the back door for me and said, have a seat, please. And I did. I sat down. I've never been in the back of a police car before. And it kind of wigged me out. There was no door handles, no door locks. I won't waste time with that. But we got to the OSI headquarters, which was just a couple miles away, if that. And he pulled up in front, opened the door for me, shut it, and said, follow me, please. So I did. I followed him. We went through the front door and then through a double door like thing where he walked up and they hit a buzzer. And when the buzzer sounded, he could open the door. So we went into that door, and then that door shut behind us. And then the second buzzer went off. Then he opened the second door, and then we went in. So he took me down a long corridor of, they were interrogation rooms, and they were marked alphabetically, A, B, C, D, and I'm at the one on the very end, and I think it was in room E or something. And he opened the door and said, someone will be right with you. And the door shut like a bank vault. I didn't even try it. I knew it was locked. And I'm looking around, and the room is about the size of my master bedroom bathroom. I mean, it's a small little room with a desk in the middle, and a chair, comfortable chair, padded chair on rollers, and there's a framed mirror against the wall to my left. Now, what do you need a framed mirror for? I mean, nobody's going to be in there grooming themselves, It had to be one of those two-way affairs, and I wanted to get up and cup my hands and look through it, but I didn't have the nerve to do that. And I sat in a comfortable chair, and it's maybe 20 after 9, and there's a General Electric schoolhouse clock right above the door. And the door is a metal door with just this 5 by 7 inch window with those cross wires in it. And nothing on the walls. And I waited, and I waited. And, in retrospect, I think that's part of the, making me wait was part of the game, part of their procedure. So it was close to noon. And I'm the longer I'm there, the more anxious I get. And I saw somebody outside the door, and then they had a key and opened the door, and it was the same 2 agents that visited me when I was in the hospital. And they were talking between themselves, and they walked in and completely ignored me. And we're talking about golf or something. I think it was golf. And he kicked me out of the comfortable chair and made me take one of these fiberglass chairs that were kind of scoop-like they had all over the place in the 70s. And I pulled that up to the table, and the guy in charge, the major, the guy with the southern accent, said, "Well, son, did you find any film, or did you find your camera for me?" And I said, "No, sir, I don't have anything." And he says, "Well, it may not matter. It's okay." And he says, you're going to be hypnotized today." And I said, "No, sir, I didn't know that." And I didn't, and I was shocked. And I said, "No, sir, I had no idea." Well, back when I was in the hospital, I may have mentioned this, that before the two agents left, they scooped everything off my side table and laid some forms in front of me, handed me a pen, and I'm like, "Sir, what are these?" And he says, "Son, those are waiver and consent forms. Those give us the right to look in your house, look in your car, see if you have anything illegal, see if you got a big old bag of marijuana in your car. You don't have a big old bag of marijuana in your car, do you, son?" And I'm like, "No, sir." And I'm dumb. I have the feeling that if I protest, I'm going to look guilty, which, and I don't know if it would have made a lot of difference, to tell you the truth. So I signed these things. One of the things I signed, because I said, "Sir, I don't want to do this." And he reaches in his briefcase, and now he's got his angry face on, and he pulls out a sheet of paper, and he slams it on the desk in front of me, and he points with his finger, and he says, "Is that not your signature, son?" And it was. I'd signed it. And I said, "Yes, sir, it is, but, sir, I don't want to do this." And he says, "Oh, you don't want to do this? No problem." He said, "Son, we would never force you to do something you don't want to do." He said, "You just say the word, and I'll tear these papers up for you right now. We can stop this." And I said, "Yeah, I'd like that." And then he said, "And we'll just see you at the court-martial." And I thought, my God, I haven't been charged with a crime, I don't even know what I'm suspected of doing, other than maybe having a black and white photograph of a UFO the size of Walmart. Other than that, I don't think that was a crime. God, I wish I had 36 exposure rule of that. So my gut was that, the best thing I can do is roll with this. No. My undergraduate degree is in psychology. I had been taking evening classes for a couple of years, and I knew a little bit about psychology, and I knew that I could not be hypnotized against my will. I knew that, and I knew that I could resist that, and I did, but I didn't know about the drug, and that worried me a little bit. And then this guy taps on the door, and the captain is closest. He opens the door, and this guy comes in, and he's a major. He's got oak leaves on, but he has no name tag, which was odd. And he talked to the two agents, and they were talking about fishing. I guess he didn't golf, and they're having this nice little conversation back and forth. And then he suddenly shifts gears over to me, and he holds out his hand, and he says, "Sergeant Lovelace, it's so nice to finally meet you." Oh. And I'm just taken aback, because he handles himself more like a therapist or a priest, but not like a military officer. So I shook his hand, and he said, "Oh, I understand you're from St. Louis." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Oh, yeah." And he rattles off some landmarks. And we start this little back and forth conversation. And he says, "Pull up your chair next to me here." And he kind of scoots over into my personal space. And we're having this conversation, and he's smiling and nodding his head. And I'm thinking, this is not right, because I'm just not that interesting. I'm from St. Louis, but I'm not that interesting. I think he could perceive that I kind of put my guard up, because I thought, now's the time to put your guard up, because I don't know what's going on, but it's potentially not in my best interest. So he shifts gears, and he says, "Terry, do you trust me?" And I thought, like hell. But of course, I said the obvious and civil thing. I said, "Yes, I trust you." And I didn't know what to call him other than Major, because he didn't have a name tag on. And then he says, "For today's little exercise only, would you call me Brad instead of Major? That is my name. And it was just spooky. It was just creepy the way the guy said it, you know.
I'll be Brad.
And I said, yes, sir. And he says, don't you mean yes, Brad? And I said, yes, Brad. And then he says, and Terry, for purposes of today's little exercise, may I call you Terry? That is your name. And I'm like, sure. And it just felt really weird talking to an officer like this, you know. And then he says, you know, I'm gonna take you through a relaxation exercise is what he called it. And he says, and I'm going to give you a little medicine in your arm. And I know the medication they give me. It was sodium amytal, a short-acting hypnotic. I know it because I've talked to people that have experienced it. I talked to a person who claims to have been one of the people who administered it. And everyone told me it was sodium amytal. So I'm assuming that that's true. So he asked me to go through this progressive relaxation thing where he says, now, Terry, we're standing at the stairwell. We're going to go down, walk down and look around downstairs and see what's down there. Now, I want you to follow my instructions carefully. And he had this really smooth voice. I mean, like a radio announcer. It was just real easy to listen to. And he says, here we go, Terry. Take that first step. In your mind's eye, see yourself taking that first step down the stairwell. Take the first step, feeling relaxed. Now take the second step, feeling twice as relaxed now, feeling warm, feeling comfortable. Now take that third step. Now 3 times more relaxed. Every muscle in your body is at ease, feeling warm, feeling safe. Take a slow, deep breath and take that next step. And on. You get the idea.
Yeah, we get the idea.
So as he's doing this, in my mind's eye, to resist, I'm picturing myself going up the stairwell. You know, I'm trying to do, as he's telling me to relax, I'm trying to covertly tense my muscles instead of relaxing them. And I'm just doing everything that I can to not surrender my mind to this guy. And you know what I did that kind of seemed to work was I kind of bifurcated my mind where, you know, I thought, you know, I'll give this guy half of my brain. But this other half, I'm going to keep it. And I'm not going to give it to him. And I'm not going to let myself be fully hypnotized. I was definitely afraid that I'd come out of this and I would have confessed to something I didn't do and have no memory of because I didn't trust these people.
Right.
So in this other part of my brain, I'm playing Beatle music, all the words to Norwegian Wood, and then Rolling Stones, and then multiplication tables, and anything I can think of to occupy my mind. And that's what I did while he was talking. And then he gave me the medication intravenously. And I'll tell you, it was bam. It hit me like, I was in a different zone. The class of drug, sodium amytal, is called a hypnotic. And it's called a hypnotic for a reason, because it'll put you in a weird place. And that's where I was. And he says, that's when he started questioning. And he said, Terry, I understand that you and Toby went camping. Is that right? And I said, yes, Brad. And he said, and you saw some funny lights in the sky, didn't you, Terry? And I said, yeah, we did, Brad. And he said, but they weren't funny lights at all, were they, Terry? And I said, no, Brad, they sure weren't. And he says, tell me who they were, Terry. And I said, they were the space people. Now, when I said that, I could not believe that came out of my mouth. I was, honest to God, shocked that I said that. But that's what I said. And he said, tell me about it. Tell me what the craft looked like. And I told him. And this is when he started probing my memories of being inside the ship and what they said to me and what I saw. And the way his questions were framed And the way he asked me at the hospital, these guys knew what I saw. No doubt in my mind, they already knew. They wanted to know how much I knew. And I figured out pretty early in this exercise that the purpose of all this was under hypnosis and the influence of these drugs to make me forget this, everything that I saw. And I thought, I'm the one that went through this. I'm the one that experienced this. And I'm not going to let you take these memories from me. I own them. And I'm not going to give them up. And, I've often thought over the last 40 years, would my life have been, much easier had I just relented and gone along with the thing and let them erase my memory? But I don't think so. Because I think if they do that, if you let them do that to you and they suppress that memory, I think all this stuff will come back anyway. I mean, it'll bubble up from your subconscious and it could manifest in all kinds of unhealthy ways, drugs, alcohol, risky behavior, who knows? But I wanted to hold on to those memories. And toward the end, he said, Terry, you talked to these two agents. You remember that, don't you? And I said, yes, Brad. And he said, they came and see you when you were in the hospital. I said, yes, Brad. And he says, this is very important, Terry. He says, now listen closely. Did you tell these two agents the truth? And you know what? I did. I did tell them the truth. I told them we went to bed feeling bad. We woke up sick as dogs, and we came back. I just left out the part about the UFO, the size of Walmart, So I could say with confidence, yes, I did tell them the truth. And he seemed very satisfied with that. And he asked the other two agents, he said, you boys got anything else? And they said no. And one thing I should mention, it's very important, is that one of the questions he asked me, when he asked me about what I saw aboard the ship, and I told him about those humans in tan flight suits with issue combat boots and military haircuts that carried themselves with a demeanor like they were members of the flight crew and not tourists. And when I brought that up, and I told them what I saw, same thing I relayed to you earlier, I heard a cough and a couple of expletives and shuffling of papers. And Brad said, Terry, that never happened. Do you understand? That doesn't happen. That would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? Now, we both know that that never happened, don't we? And I thought, oh, yeah, I'm not going to forget this because this is important. This really struck a nerve with them. I mean, like a dental drill, it struck a nerve. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to remember this. And I did. And I remembered, like I say, I don't have a clear linear memory of everything that happened. I wish I did. And maybe someday soon I will have.
But did you say, Brad, it never happened?
No, I said, yes, Brad. Because that's the way I was kind of answering him was, like, yes, I understand, yeah, Brad, yes. That never happened. You understand? Yes. And a lot of his questions were leading questions. Like the first question he asked me, was a leading question. They weren't stars at all, were they, Terry? No, they weren't. What were they, Terry? Yeah, he was good at his job. I'll say that. He did a good job of bringing things to the forefront of my memory that I didn't even remember. But like I say, the thing that upset them the most, I told them about the other human beings in the craft, and that didn't seem to get a big response. And then, of course, when we wind the thing up, this was kind of interesting. He said, Terry, you have this burden that you're carrying with you of all these memories, all these bad things that happened to you, all these ugly things that you saw. That's a burden that's heavy on your shoulders, and I want you to let me take it for you. Will you do that for me, Terry? Will you let me take this burden? And I thought, nah, you ain't taking this away. But I said, yes, Brad. And he said, Terry, I'm going to clap my hands 3 times, and then this will all be gone. And you'll be happy again, and you'll feel secure, and everything will be okay. And you'll wake up feeling refreshed, wake up feeling like you've just had a full night's sleep, and everything will be good. And this is the point where I got a little bit nervous, because I thought, what if he claps his hands 3 times and my mind goes blank,
Right.
So I tried to listen to the Beatle music in the other half of my mind and hold on to these memories. And he clapped 3 times and nothing happened. Nothing happened that I'm aware of anyway. Now, can I say that for sure that nothing happened? No.
Right.
But I know this, he didn't take everything from me, and I'm glad he didn't. Because like I say, I think it would have been bad for me if he had done that. So that's the story. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Questions. Yeah. So the uniforms they're wearing, are they like flight suits? Are they one piece? Are they a top and a bottom?
They're standard one-piece flight suits that look like you'd call a jumpsuit, like mechanics used to wear back in the day, auto mechanics,
right.
But they looked military. They were tan in color. And like I say, I don't know any branch of the service that wore tan-colored flight suits. I mean, that just baffles me. I mean, unless maybe the Coast Guard did, but I don't know what the Coast Guard would have been doing in the middle of Missouri, on a spaceship. So
and that's something we could research a bit. Who had tan flight suits in the 60s? Did she wear a flight suit, or did she wear something else?
No, she was wearing a flight suit just like all the others.
Flight suits. Okay.
Flight suit and issued combat boots.
Combat boots, which you won't need in a spaceship.
You don't, but it is kind of a utility, all-purpose kind of thing that I could see being issued to crew members. I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I don't have any experience with space things that I can, not much anyway. So I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
Something like that. I'm looking online. There's lots of tan flight suits.
The British in World War II, I think, wore tan flight suits.
Yeah, British. Yeah, so they are coming up, The patch, the orange, you don't remember anything, but it was round, right?
It was definitely orange. And it was about between 3 and 4 inches in diameter, circular, and there was white writing on it, but they were just too far away for me to focus my eyes and see what was on it. And I'd love to know.
Well, if it's a secret space force, I'm sure we wouldn't know what the secret space program. Apparently the secret space program has been around. That would have been the 70s, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 77.
Yeah, it was around.
Well, what's his name? Something Mills Tompkins.
William
Tompkins.
Bill Tompkins, yeah.
William Mills Tompkins, yes. He said that in the 50s, the U.S. Navy was working on an intergalactic spacecraft, and they were looking at aircraft carrier blueprints when the engineers were working on the design of the thing. He was a guest of Carrie Cassidy's, and I was watching Carrie's show, and I saw him on there. And I think that may have been the first time I'd heard about the secret space program and all that. And, he sure came across as a credible guy.
Oh, I met him 2 weeks before he died, and he was just amazing. He was on to something. I saw him at his last conference. But so he was saying that was the Navy, that the Navy was really in charge of the space program.
And the Air Force caught up is what.
Yeah, the Air Force. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we're not going to get their patch because that's of course not published anywhere. But that's probably the Navy and the secret space program. So, but that was the Army that was questioning you, right?
No, that was the Air Force.
So the Air Force, yeah. So the Air Force was jealous of the Navy because the Navy was way ahead of them. So you might have just been caught in the middle of our own military being, in competition with each other.
And you know what? I could see that kind of rivalry, but I think it was more of an intelligence issue that they did not want. They certainly didn't want me to have a 36 exposure roll of film of pictures of this thing. I think I think they were very afraid of that. And, they didn't want us talking to one another. They didn't want to, because two people with the same story is twice as credible as one.
So did you have the film or not?
That's, I don't know if I mentioned this last time or not, but I had actually, and this is totally out of character for me, because it was the whole purpose of the exercise. I had packed my camera bag carefully with all kinds of black and white film and special filters, how amateur photographers are. And I packed my bag. I left it sitting on my kitchen counter, so I didn't have a camera. However, Toby had his camera, and it was in his backpack, and it was within arm's reach. So he could have taken his camera out at any time and taken a dozen pictures of this thing. But the idea of taking a picture of this thing never crossed my mind. And I don't get that. Because you know how people that like to take pictures and get a new camera and they're into it, they're a nuisance. They're taking everyone's picture. And I don't understand that. I mean, I think that shows that at some level they do control our thoughts. That's why they.
Yeah, if they're working with the Greys, they know what you're thinking before you think it. So you can't hide anything from them. But you're just reminding me. I was over and I took all these pictures in '93 when I first moved to Oahu, and I was living in a small hotel room my first few months there, and they completely took this roll of film. I'm not sure what I caught on it, but and then I took a picture of the new stealth bomber. They were showing them off, and they flew right for Oahu, and it went right between the buildings, and it's like it stopped over my head, and I looked straight up between the buildings, and I took this picture of the stealth bomber. It was like it was tracking me. I'm a lifelong experiencer. They've got some connection. It was like it's tracking me. So I took it, and that whole row was blank. Like, you son of a bitch. Yeah. So I know they don't want anything on film. And I've had the ships come out on my own porch here where I live. And I go to get my cell phone. They said, if you try to take a picture of us, they said it telepathically, we're going to blink out of here so fast you're not going to know what happened. So if you just want to look at us and we talk to you, you keep your camera,
Did you ask him why?
I never thought of asking them why, but they don't want proof like that.
I don't know if I sent them to you, but I've got some amazing pictures of UFOs. I mean, they're not, I see people that have these photographs of what looks like the perfect UFO, and usually you never see it come into the frame or leave the frame. So I'm kind of the opinion, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. But I've got photographs from, I was coming home from the VA clinic in Plano, Texas, about 10 miles away. And I was followed by a helicopter. Matter of fact, I've got a photograph of the helicopter leaving the VA center to follow me home. And while the helicopter's over my car, I could see a black blur out of my vision to the side. And when I got home, there was a saucer parked directly over my house. And I've got a photograph of that. And I think I'd send it to you. It's the image name is DISC in all caps 1. Disc 1.
I don't have any, let's see. If you could send this stuff again, I'll put it on this show page, but I have things from the last batch. But yeah, this is going to be a permanent record. Now I've got your headshot, your knee operation thing, and no, I don't have it. So, and your books. So if you want to send me anything, I'll add it to your 2 show pages, so it's up there as a permanent record. And then
Yes.
We're going to link for the show. We've got like 2 minutes, so how do people reach you? What would the final things you want to say?
Yes, well, first of all, thanks for tuning in and listening. I appreciate it very much. My book is called Incident at Devil's Den. It's available only on Amazon, but it's available in a Kindle version and available in paperback that has all of the pictures in back of it. And then I recorded an audiobook that I think turned out well. And I didn't use a voice artist. I don't have a radio voice, but I wanted it to be in my own words. So I read the entire book, and that's the audiobook that's available. I have a website that's very it's not well maintained, but there's some photographs there, some images you might find interesting, including the hand drawing that I did of the ship. That's at terrylovelace.com. terrylovelace.com. The book is on Amazon, and you can reach me at, I have an Incident at Devil's Den page on Facebook. And you can message me there, send me a message or whatever, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'll try to get back to everyone.
Thank you, Terry. When your new book comes out, we'll have you on again. But yes, and we really enjoy listening to you. Thank you very much. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Debra.
Thank you.